With Hawke's Bay now a drought region, we visit one man who's been proactive in the collection and storage of water. Mike Glazebrook began farming when he left university in 1983. In the early 90s, he tried growing organic squash for the Japanese market with mixed results. Since then, he's focused his energies on sustainability.
Well, I suppose sustainability means being able to do something indefinitely. So there's a lot of things we've had to look at here in terms of what's sustainable and what's not. Ironically, I used to have about 500 hectares of the flats in organic production. I felt after a while that maybe that wasn't sustainable and that we had to do a lot of cultivation to kill the existing grass sward before we cropped, and generally relied on more cultivation than I was comfortable with. So now we've changed that to a best of both system where we still keep all the good things we learnt from organics about managing your soil and your soil life and keeping some sort of balance and diversity in the program, but we use more conservation tillage and strip tillage techniques, and that seems to be a recipe that works well for us. In order to keep the farm sustainable, we're putting on annual dressings of compost. We're being very careful not to damage the soil structure. We've got irrigation practices that we think are now as good as we can get them in terms of applying water efficiently. We've got good water storage, so we think we can survive events when the river is low. So I'm reasonably comfortable that we've got it as good as we can at the moment, but not smug that there's always going to be a need for change and improvement as times change, as markets change, as we need to do different things. This is the compost pad at Te Tua Station. This is my first commercial compost operation. It grew out of my organic cropping days. It started about 20 years ago, and then it grew to we're covering organic crops on about 500 hectares off the flats around here. And it quickly became obvious that I needed a source of nutrients. What we were finding, we were getting great crops for the first couple of years, and then the nutrient deficiency, especially nitrogen, became obvious. So we tried all sorts of other remedies and witches' brews, fish fertilisers and things, but we found the only thing that really put enough quantity of nutrients back in was compost. The landfill charges for disposing of this organic waste went up, so before we knew it, people were looking for a way to get rid of their organic waste, whereas before we'd been having to work hard to find anything to compost. So it evolved from making compost for the organic operation, and now we're not doing organic crops anymore, but people are still looking for somewhere to dispose of their organic waste. So it comes here and we produce compost. Some we use on the farm and the rest of it we sell. Part of making compost on a commercial scale is containment of the leachate. So these ponds collect the leachate that comes off the aeration bins and off the yard generally when it rains. And they all come into this pond here, and then it's collected from this pond here up through that transfer pump and goes into the pond behind us. And from there it gets pumped out onto the hills and amongst the tree plantings to disperse the leachate to land. The wastewater comes from the ponds we saw over at the compost pad and from the Constellation Brands winery over the road, comes out here, gets spread out on this paddock through these little sprinklers, and then if you see behind me there's a bioswale area planted with trees, and that intercepts any nutrients from getting down into the wetland below. Our entire irrigation scheme's dependent on the river flow from the Nowra River. In the mid-90s, I learned a lesson on the cost of relying on that flow. When you get a water ban that goes on and off for several weeks, and I had about 200 or 300 acres of crop that got severely damaged by that event. So I figured that if we were going to grow a full area on these flats again, I had to have a solution. Well, I was very lucky. The lake behind me was, before the paddock was flooded, it was a poorly drained paddock. I knew it held water because it had flooded before and the water had sat there for a long time. It needed nothing to seal it or anything like that. Also, I was lucky that I could just run the water in through the old canals from the border dike system. It wasn't too much work to get the water in, so I was exceptionally lucky in what I could build the actual dam for. A lot more has been spent on the infrastructure and the pipework and the pumps and all the rest of it, but the actual dam construction was just a fortunate site. It holds 450,000 cubic metres. It's never really been tested in a prolonged water ban yet. Where it really is useful is during the frost protection season in the spring when they're trying to keep the frost off the vineyard. We've got 3 vineyards that rely on it, and between them they take out about 2,000 litres a second. So in the course of 2 or 3 nights they can drop it a metre or more. So that's really the only time we've tested it. However, the season will come when we have a prolonged water ban of 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and that will test the capacity of the system. In terms of the economics of a dam, it's hard to work out exactly what the payback period is. In a sense, I think it paid for itself in the first season because although we didn't need it because of a water ban and needed the storage, it gave me confidence to go out and do a planting program much bigger than I normally would have. I would have been worried about the possibility of a water ban and just wouldn't have put in the investment into the irrigation and into the crops. But once I had the dam there, I knew I had the water, I could expand the cropping area with confidence. So in that sense, I think it had a very short payback.
Andrew Curtis from the Regional Council is using the dam as an example of water storage that they want to see developed throughout the bay.
We have an active regional resource management plan which actually has defined minimum flow levels in it, and obviously once the rivers reach those minimum flows then we have to put them onto ban basically. There's quite a few people there which don't have the opportunity that Mike's got here or haven't got suitable places, so what we're sort of thinking of doing here, well what we are doing as part of the new water strategy is actually having a look-see to see if there are opportunities for sort of community-based storage projects in Hawke's Bay. So the first stage, what we're actually getting into is having a water strategic study to actually identify where are the hotspots and also run some climate change scenarios to actually look at what NIWA are predicting into the future. And then from the areas that drop out, then actually start looking at how we can actually plug the gaps that exist. I mean, at the moment, we've already started down in Central Hawke's Bay, having a look at with the water storage pre-feasibility study going on down there. It's always been the vision of the councillors to have an equal advocacy role alongside the compliance, consents, regulatory type role. So that's where this has all come out from, the development of the water strategy and the 10-year plan. And regional councils aren't just about the environment, they're about economic and the social well-beings of the region. So that's what we're aiming to do, is actually future-proof Hawke's Bay, ensure that our processing industries stay here and we can sort of agriculture can supply the products that they need to stay here. Because at the end of the day, Hawke's Bay is an agricultural region and it's based around its processing.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.